Okay, well, maybe we'll get started, and if anyone else joins, we will get them up to speed. But I want to make sure Jennifer has as much time as possible to teach us, to inspire us, and then if we have time for questions at the end, that is certainly wonderful. So let me just say good evening. It is a beautiful night. Jeannie is on the porch, so she might be the smartest one of all of us to enjoy nature. um, my name is Crystal Emmerich. I'm the founder and executive director of Brave Step. And our mission is largely to empower everyone who is impacted by sexual violence. We have been doing these quarterly Changemaker trainings for, I believe, about 2 years. And it's a mixture of trauma prevention. So how do we prevent child sexual abuse? How do we prevent sexual assault? But also it's how do we strengthen ourselves so that we can show up when it counts? I know that all of us might agree that if we're empty, we can't pour into others. And so this session, a lot of it is how do we, how do we pour in ourselves, and then how can we show up when we need to be there for others? A couple of housekeeping things. I'm going to ask everyone, if you're not on mute, except for Jennifer, to mute yourselves just so that we don't have any interference with her when she's talking. If for some reason you're triggered, feel free to, step outside, take a deep breath, do a grounding exercise. I don't anticipate that happening, but in case it is, take time and take care of yourself, most importantly. Also, as Jennifer is talking, if you guys have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Hopefully at the end, we'll have time to answer some of those. But if you're like me and you will forget that question, definitely feel comfortable just popping it in there. So let me turn it over to the woman who we are really here to hear. Miss Jennifer Dean is a licensed counselor and a native of Union County. I'm finding there's not a lot of natives of this area, so you are a unicorn, Jennifer. She also is a fellow Tar Heel, so she went to UNC Chapel Hill and then got her counseling degree, psychology degree from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in Chicago. Jennifer has more than 24 years of clinical experience. She's level 1 trained EMDR clinician. She's almost certified supervisor for brain spotting. Correct me if I said that wrong. She's very close to it, but she utilizes brain spotting, which is another technique for trauma. Ultimately, she's a wonderful, amazing person, and we're just grateful that she's here tonight to share with us and to lead us. So, Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I do have to say, Crystal said the number of people that signed up, this feels much more doable and engageable. So really, I was a little intimidated by that. So I love the numbers that we have right now, which is great. And that gives us space that if you do have a question, like Crystal said, drop it into the chat and we'll try to hold space for that. And you will hear this phrase, hold space, a lot tonight. You'll probably walk out using it all over the place today as well. So thank you again, Crystal, for having me. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. And this is something that I try to do daily as I'm in my office as a counselor. And it's also something that I try to do in my personal world with family and friends and colleagues, that sort of thing. But a qualifier, I probably should have said this to you, Crystal, before you actually had me show up here. I am coming to you not as an expert in this, but really as a fellow traveler and a fellow learner. Like even preparing for this talk was useful for me as I held space to look at that. So as we get started, I want to invite you to grab a piece of paper or a note section on your phone, or if you've got a great memory, just store these questions, because as we're going through, there you go, I love it. Go, Vicki. As we're going through the talk tonight, there'll be places where I'll say, here's the question to continue for further exploration, because in one sense, we're shining a light on holding space, but it also shines a light on how we hold space. So I'm going to give you questions that you can continue to lean into. So we're going to look at what it is and what it is not. But before we jump in to look at some examples of things, I want you to think of sort of two scenarios. Think about a teenager developing. You know that stage where their feet are really big and their bodies are really small, and they haven't sort of grown into themselves yet or into their bodies. I I want you to hold that picture. And then I wish I had the picture of it. I just took one this morning. I planted some limelight hydrangeas like 3 years ago. And they started out probably like about, I don't know, this big, and they are taller than I am now. And they haven't even bloomed yet. So the limelight, they're the ones that are good in the sun. So what I want you to remember is we are all in a process of growing. So just like the teen, just like the flowers. So I don't want, if anything comes up tonight, I don't want you to shame yourself for being in a process of growing. We're changing. We are exploring the concept of holding space. And we're not today where we're going to be tomorrow on this topic or learning to be gracious with ourselves or other people. So give yourself grace as we go through this topic. If there comes to a place where you're like, oh my goodness, they say don't do this, and I've done this 1,000 times, give yourself grace. We're all growing and changing. And we're just taking a growth mindset with this. That's the idea that our intelligence and our skills and our abilities with practice and with effort, they can keep growing and changing, and we can begin to grow, and our brains can shift and change too. So that is the angle we're coming from as we look at this topic tonight. So a few examples of holding space. I'm just going to kind of bullet point these like popcorn like. A teenage boy invites a new kid to sit with them at lunch. A young professional takes time after work to actually go exercise. An older woman takes a young woman to coffee and listens to the details of a budding relationship. A group of older folks takes a younger woman out and celebrates a baby that's coming, gives lots of gifts and encouragement. A sudden passing of a family member, and a meal is brought, and a short visit and a hug is left, or maybe a long visit, either one. A conversation is held between friends as they walk, and one utters words of despair that they've never uttered before, and the other listens and holds that tenderly. Picking up groceries for a sick friend, an aspiring attorney takes time to journal and breathe. Someone kept referencing breath in our chat there. Going to a birthday party of someone you don't really want to go to, but you sense you need to, whether it's a colleague or a neighbor. All of these are examples of holding space. I'm going to read you a definition from Rita Walker, who is a clinical psychologist, researcher, and professor at the University of Houston. It's long, so hang on there with me for a second. Holding space for someone can mean different things for different people. But at a minimum, it means taking the initiative without any prompting to be empathic to another person's situation or circumstance, and making time for that individual to do whatever is needed for them, like voicing hurt or anger or another strong emotion, and receiving whatever they need to communicate in a way that is supportive and non-judgmental. And these are a couple words you'll hear pop up over and over again. And that's Rita Walker from the University of Houston. Additionally, here's another definition from a woman, Heather Plett, who is the founder of the Center of Holding Space. I can't remember if it's Center of or for, but if you Google that, you will find her. And she says she first learned of this phrase from an organizational context, but she actually experienced it from a palliative care nurse as she was holding space for her mother in passing. And she says this nurse, Anne, that's how she references her, that they taught her how to give medicine in a way that they had never done, taught them to do difficult tasks, taught them to ask for help. She told them, you need to call the funeral home, gather people who want to say their final farewells, and sit with your mom as long as you need. And Heather Plett describes Anne as a facilitator, a coach, and a guide. And those are all things and all people and roles that we can play that hold space. Ms. Plett's definition is similar to Dr. Walker's. It means that holding space means that we're willing to walk alongside another person in whatever journey they're on without judging them, making them feel inadequate, trying to fix them, or trying to impact the outcome. When we hold space for other people, we open our hearts and offer unconditional support and let go of judgment and control. So the first little reflection question here, we'll pause there because that's a lot of words that we just went through, and we'll come back to bullet pointing them again so you can hear them again. But who comes to mind for you when you think about holding space for another, or another way to say that is, who are you holding space for? And this could be personally, it could be professionally. Just see what bubbles up with these questions. And these will be questions just to jot down and then to take and continue to explore outside of here. So we see from holding space, if we kind of go back again and visit that idea, I love that, take constant notes, different things for different people. That's what it means. It's empathic towards the other person's situation, doing what is needed, listen openly, supportive, walking alongside a person, opening our hearts, unconditional support. And I'm like, oh my word, I'm tired just thinking about that. Like, really, that is a tall order. Like, I cannot give everyone this. So I want us to just to be aware that, yes, it's a tall order in terms of that idea of holding space. And we can't hold space for everyone, and we can't do it at 100% for everyone. So otherwise, if we did, we'd be living a completely boundaryless life. And Brave Step would be needing to do a lot more of these for us, because we just can't, we don't have that much time and energy. So as we look at this, also another little reflection question, as two back to back, where do I need to have boundaries? Who do I need to have boundaries with? And am I living a boundaryless life? So where do I need to have boundaries? Who do I need to have boundaries with? And am I living a boundaryless life? Because if we're overwhelmed with work, if we're like 150,000% there, then we don't even have the ability to hold space for ourselves, much less for anyone else. Or if we're holding space for like 50 people, I'm exaggerating that, then we don't maybe have space to be attuned to the people who are in our home, or the people who in our family maybe we're called to. So again, just sort of checking ourselves with that boundary question. How can we do this well? That's a great question. And most of you are probably familiar, you've maybe even heard of Daniel Siegel. He was a UCLA professor of psychiatry, and he's got great resources. And I just feel like he explains things so well. So we're going to take a few notes from him. He talks about attuned communication, which means when we attune to others, we allow our own internal state to shift, to come to resonate with the inner world of another. So again, those words, the inner world of another, that we hold that space to connect with the inner world of another. And it gives that sense, that feeling of being felt. Does that make sense? It's the feeling felt that emerges in close relationships. Another way that we can describe this is a word or a phrase called deep listening. That we're deeply listening with someone when we're holding that space. This is not going to be a good, if you're a language arts teacher, do you remember when they were like, don't use the definition, don't use the word in the definition. We're just using the word in the definition the whole night. So permission to do that for all of us. But the deep listening alone can actually even help a person to feel a sense of ease. I mean, I will say to people, I don't have a magic wand when you come into counseling, but somehow being here and feeling seen and heard helps it to feel a little bit better. And often you find that if you talk to a friend and you're like, okay, I feel better. And in fact, none of the circumstances have changed. You just have felt seen and heard, and there's a felt sense and a sense of soothing that comes from that. Daniel Siegel, these are points you've probably heard as well. He talks about feeling safe, seen, feeling soothed and secure. And he talks about it from the perspective of parenting. But again, we were all children once. So these really go across generational, or whether we were children or whether we're adults, these are things that we all need. He talks about safety. He says parents have two primary jobs when it comes to keeping kids safe and making them feel safe, protect them from harm, and avoid becoming a source of fear and threat. And so, yes, that's a parent, but that's also for us as we're holding space. I want to protect the people that I'm holding space for from harm. And I don't want to be so dysregulated that I'm giving them, that I'm becoming a source of fear and threat to them. Seen, we're going to go through his S's. Truly seeing kids, he's talking about, but people, contain several things. He says it means attuning to their internal mental state. That again, seeing what's going on, coming to understand their internal life, and responding to what we see in a timely and effective manner. So if you have a girlfriend who says, or a guy friend who says, hey, I'm really in crisis, I need to chat. And you're like, absolutely, I'm here with you. Let's get together in 3 weeks. That doesn't really help people to feel seen. So that timely and effective manner is a key piece of this. And the other piece, I'll pull this out, is watching what happens in the space that we are with people. So if I'm sitting here talking to someone and I pull this phone up, we all know what that feels like. We don't feel seen in that moment. I'm going to put that phone down because I do want to see you guys and connect with you guys here. But phones, distractions, thinking about our next thing, all of those are things that get in the way of us actually seeing people who are in front of us. Soothed, he goes on to say, soothed is when a child is in a state of internal distress, that negative experience can be shifted, I love this, by an interaction with a caregiver who attunes and cares for that child. So even though they still may be suffering, at least they won't be alone in their pain. And there's 2 levels that this can happen. So we can do this with a friend or a colleague and hold that space so that they're not alone in their pain. But let's also say, as we learn to do that with other people and our body learns to soothe a little bit, we can also practice that with ourselves. Let's say I feel really sad or devastated about something. We often go to numbing or distracting, or we don't want to feel the feeling. But if we can attend to that feeling and sit with it and almost help that feeling not be alone in ourselves. Does that make sense? So it's being soothed by another, but then also learning to soothe ourselves and be with that feeling, even though a lot of times in our culture, we just want to distract or not feel it. And we have 1,000 ways that we can do that. We can shop, we can watch TV, we can go do work, we can do a lot of things. And sometimes those are healthy things that keep us from actually being with the pain that we're attending to. Siegel has some great phrases, name it to tame it. And if you go, I'll pull this little book up. This is called The Whole Brain Child. And at the back, it has what they call the refrigerator sheet, and it has all of his key phrases there. He has name it to tame it, engage, don't enrage, connect, and redirect. So if you don't want to get the book, you can just go Google The Whole Brain Child, and it's like a little cheat sheet. And it's actually called the refrigerator sheet. But he talks some about what naming things how it helps in our brain and helps to calm our nervous system. So name it to tame it. Find a safe space and name it, or be that safe space and allow people the opportunity to name what's going on for them. Engage, don't enrage. Obviously, we want to engage with someone. We don't want to drop sort of little bombs of shame and criticism and calls to enrage them in whatever situation that they're in. And then Siegel goes on to say, those S's, the idea of feeling safe and seen and soothed, create a sense of security. And that's really what we're trying to do for people as we hold space for them, is help their systems to feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. Google, if you're interested in him, go look up some videos. He does a great job of explaining. I mean, this is his work. And he has a great thing too, where he talks about the hand brain model, where he says, this is the limbic system where we're feeling. And then when we get sort of dysregulated, we have big emotions that come up, we can flip our lids. And he says, I can teach children, and again, we can teach ourselves as adults, that if we can say, I feel like I'm about to flip my lid, it can help me to calm my nervous system and keep myself from flipping out. So he's got great, very tangible tools. Pause for a second. There was another bit of a lot of words. Who do you help to keep safe, seen, soothed, and secure? And again, some of these are reiterations of the first round, but professionally or personally, who do you help to keep safe, seen, soothed, and secure? And if you want a deeper dive into this, and this can be tender space, is who kept you safe, seen, soothed, and secure? And the flip side of that, what was it like not to have some measure of safety or to be seen, soothed, or feel secure? And those are deeper dive questions that can really bring up lots of thoughts and feelings. So I encourage you, if you go into those spaces, find a safe person for you who you can talk, trust, and feel with. We don't want to go into those places where we're just blind, quiet, and numb. But if you lean into those questions, sometimes they really can go into some tender spaces. Okay, move around in your chair, get grounded again if you need to, because we do have lots of words. Any questions so far? Any thoughts, questions, comments? Are you doing okay? Okay. If you do have them, Crystal, just tell me if I miss it in the chat, but any questions on that, just fire away. So some particular, oh, great. Thanks, Jeannie. Particular how-tos, mirror their body language. So someone's kind of open, be open. If you're trying to hold space for a teen, maybe don't do it face-to-face. Like, I mean, you can be face-to-face, but not in sort of right across from one another. Does that make sense? Like you can see even how in my office, I have a sofa there and the chair is sort of on an angle. I don't want to sit directly opposite of the person that I'm trying to walk beside. I was in a training years ago. I did live in Chicago. I did leave Union County once, and I lived in Chicago for about 15 years, or north of Chicago. And I was in a training. I worked for a nonprofit there where we worked with teens, and we had a trainer come in and he said, do not sit directly across from these teenagers. A lot of them were involved with the court system. He was like, do not put yourself in sort of an oppositional sort of stance. Like join them, either have two chairs on the same wall where you're kind of focusing on the same point. This is why I think often if any of you have had teens or nieces or nephews, there you go, right there, Jeannie. I was just getting to it. You beat me to the punch. Best talks are in the car. You're sort of side by side. You've got a common focus forward, and they're not in this sort of feeling like I'm in their face. So use that not just with teens, but with folks that you're trying to walk beside. If it's a hard topic, then maybe sit on the far end of the couch and go, wow, what was that like for you? And use that sort of stance for the driving. Reflecting, use some of their language. And this is something you can totally make fun of therapy for. People are like, so I'm supposed to say what they say. Yeah, kind of. Like, it just helps us to feel seen. So I'm telling you that I'm overwhelmed, and you say, so you're feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, yes, I'm feeling overwhelmed. You totally get it. That sounds really hard. It is. And so that again, using some of their language is very helpful when you're holding space. And I'm going to share with you a couple little phrases that we use in brain spotting. And brain spotting, as Crystal referenced, is a tool, mind-body tool, sort of like EMDR, that helps people to process things that our body and our mind are holding, trauma, capital T, lowercase t, whichever. But one of the things that we say in brain spotting is stay in the tail of the comment. So as the therapist, if this is the client, I don't want to get ahead of them. I don't want to say, well, this is probably how this feels for you. I totally get that. No, I want to stay like a step behind them. I want to stay in the tail of the comment. So if someone says, I'm overwhelmed, I would say, wow, what's that like? That sounds really hard. Instead of coming up with answers, or instead of saying, it's probably because of this, I'm going to stay in that tail of the comment. So as you're holding space for people, stay in the tail of the comment. Don't get too far ahead, and be curious. What is that like for you? What did that feel like in your body? Gosh, what does that feel like right now? When was that the hardest? When was it the easiest? So just be curious, but with that attuned presence, and take deep breaths. We're just echoing that through the chat there. People started with that, and we'll probably end with that. Take deep breaths, even as you're holding space for one another. So I'm going to do that now, and just notice, notice in your system if it had any impact, if you found yourself maybe slowing to breathe as I'm slowing to breathe. What I find in an office, not that I'm trying to control a person, but sometimes when I'm slowing down, there's that sense of those mirror neurons in our bodies where we just sort of cue. It's like sort of like, when someone yawns and you yawn. My kids used to do this just to have fun with me. I'll be like, stop yawning, because I just kept yawning. But that idea, again, when we take a breath, sometimes it might cue some level of safety in another person and allow them to take a breath in a place where they maybe have gotten to a place where they're not breathing a little bit. Validate, normalize. It makes sense that this is hard. hitting the arm really hard. It makes sense that you're mad. That's tough. And affirm them as you're holding that space. Again, we just used the word in the definition. Any questions so far? Okay. We're going to keep rolling, and then we will have some time for questions. So these are some various points. Some are from Heather Plett, the one from the Center for Holding Space, and some are things that I just threw in. When we're holding space, help people feel safe enough to fail. We are bound to make mistakes. If all of our cameras were on, I would say raise your hand if you've never made a mistake. No. Raise your hand if you've made a mistake. Yes, thank you, Vicki. Yes, absolutely. We've all made mistakes. And yet sometimes we come to people with such judgment and shame when they make a mistake. Like, why can't we just give some grace and space in that? So that's one of the things we want to bring, is help people to feel safe enough to make mistakes, take risks, have a sense of resilience, and to let them know that failing or struggling is just a part of the journey. And it's not the end of the world. The sky is not going to fall because we made a mistake, even though it may feel like that for a minute. That's when you cue breathing again. Oh, thank you, Robin. You're so kind. I'll give you an example of this. Early in my training, I worked in a hospital, and that's where I did my internship. And we were in a family session, and my supervisor was there, and there was a family member that got really dysregulated. And then I'm a young therapist. I was dysregulated. And so I sort of lost my words for a little bit. And my supervisor just graciously came in, not physically, just verbally came in, kind of gently took over the session, got things to make sure the client was protected and taken care of, gave me enough space to kind of come up for air. And then we were able to process it at the end. He didn't shame me. He didn't say, you need to get out of this field, girl. It is no good. He did not say the sky is falling and this is it. He gave me grace and space. And I learned from that, as I'm curious to go, wow, what went on in me that triggered that response? And that's something we're going to come back to in a little bit too, what other people's stuff does to our stuff. So another little point, give guidance and help with humility and thoughtfulness. Sometimes it's knowing when to give some feedback. Sometimes we just hold it for a while till the person's at a better place. Like if my supervisor mid my little moment was like, hey, you need to get your crap together, I would have been like, oh, very dysregulated, even more. So sometimes you just hold that space or withhold the guidance till the person is calmed down a little bit more. Yes, I love that, Vicki, that you remind your grandson that if he makes a mistake, it's okay. Absolutely, because it teaches us to work through the mistakes. It absolutely does. But it's a careful dance, and I know it depends if it's, if it's a big issue or not a big issue, or, if they're driving or if they're taking a test, it depends. So I hear you. There's a lot of perfectionism out there today. Give people permission to trust their own experience, their thoughts, and to process that. I may think I have the answer. Early on, I did. I thought I had a lot of answers. As I get older, I realize I have less answers. So that is actually good for me. But I may think I have the answer, but I cannot know fully the experiences of another person. I can't know, even if I saw an event happen, I can't know what happened to them a year ago. I can't know what happened to them when they were 5, when they were 2. So I really want to be tender and gentle and let them connect dots as they're connecting their story. And I'm going to toss in another brain spotting little tool that we use. We practice what we call WAIT, W-A-I-T. And this is sort of a checkpoint for myself. And it stands for, why am I talking? So it's a really great little checkpoint, whether it's a therapy session, whether it's with a friend, maybe I'm feeling nervous, or maybe I'm uncomfortable with the quiet. So I'm just going to chatter my way through that. But why am I talking? If I'm trying to hold space for someone else, why am I talking? Now, I'm not saying you have to be completely silent, but that's just a good checkpoint for us to say, is this for the benefit of the person that's there? Or is this because I want to show them how smart I am? Or that I want to show them how I can come up with all the answers, which I can't. So why am I talking? Wait. Don't take their power away. When we take decision-making out of people's hands, we can leave them feeling pretty useless or incompetent. And we don't want to do that. Now, again, you got to use wisdom in these cases. If I'm standing out near a road and a child wants to go into the road, I'm not going to say, I really just want to hold space for them to explore. They're just curious about that road. I am going to just pull that kid back. I am going to take their power away and pull them out of the street to protect them. So there's wisdom. We've got to bring wisdom to this to know when do we really hold that space? When do we really pull them back? And if it's not a life-threatening thing, give them space to sort through their story and sort through what's going on. I had a professor in graduate school, and he said he was going to write this book. I don't know that he ever did, but he talked about being over and under. And sometimes when we engage with people, we come in very much an over, like, no, with the kid, I'm going to be an over. Be like, no, you're not going into the street. Come here. I'm not going to come under and say, hey, what is it about the street that really draws you? Not going to say that. But there may be other situations that I come in gently and I come in underneath, because people are going to hear me differently if I come in underneath. And I find that a lot with holding space for clients, that if I come in gently, if there's a question that bubbles up for me, to come in gently versus between the eyes or, over them. People tend to respond better when I'm coming in gently and underneath. Allow people to make different decisions. People have different experiences. We have different cultures. We grew up geographically different places. We have different languages. Be curious, not controlling. I often say that curiosity is the antidote to control. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds good. And it really does kind of make sense. So curiosity versus control. And again, that's not in issues of safety. Give people as much information as they can handle, but not too much. Again, if you're overloading them, sort of like I'm doing with you right now, if you're overloading them, that can just be overwhelming, and we don't want to overwhelm people with that. Good. I love that you love the weight, Danielle. It is super helpful. And this is the same idea. If I'm lecturing somebody, why am I doing that? So the weight you can actually apply in lots of different situations. Like, why am I talking? Why am I giving them 1,000 points? That sort of thing. One other quick check-in for ourselves is watch our own ego as we're holding space. What is my insecurity? What's my agenda in this? Is it really about them, or do I want to show them, I don't know, do I want to show them how high I can jump? So they may be telling me about how they're struggling to jump, and I want to say, but look how high I can jump. That's a ridiculous example. But the idea is we really want to be able to put our time, space, energy, see the other person in that moment so that we're not making it about ourselves. And my little key point with this one is deal with our own stuff. Whether we're managing people, supporting family or a friend, dealing with our own stuff is important so it doesn't ooze out on other people. Dan Allender is a name. If you're in the therapy world, you've heard it. And he says, eventually every story intersects with our core stories from our family of origin. No matter how wonderful or heartbreaking our family was, our family of origin was our earliest learning classroom and influences every dimension of our life. Our family of origin plays a significant role in shaping our style of relating to ourselves, others, and the world. So if you haven't had the opportunity to explore your story, find a journal, find a friend, therapist if you want, and explore it. I'll give you a quick example of this. I'm pulling a couple stories together with this one. I was working with a 60-plus-year-old man. His mother called him stupid growing up. This was a very, sort of successful man. People look up to him. But when he was challenged, it would be very dysregulated and flip his lid, because that story of I am stupid just kept popping up. It was sort of the tape that just kept flowing and kept repeating. And so, again, those early stories that we have, sometimes they're not from trauma. Sometimes there's just a neutral event where we start to believe we can't do something. And that just gets replayed in us. And so it's important for us to attend to our story in those spaces. So again, in a lot of words, take a breath. And another reflection question: how can you explore your story in a way that feels safe for you? And I say that to you not just to get you to go to therapy. That's not my goal. But because our story and how we've dealt with it or not dealt with it really is a part of how we hold space for others. And so it really is important. It sort of invites us and sometimes yells at us to attend to that, because it can get in the way of how we hold space for others, or it can be life-giving for how we hold space for others. A couple other little pieces here. Get comfortable with emotions. That's part of us dealing with our stories. If we're holding space for other people, we're going to see lots of emotions, complex emotions, fear, trauma. And so it's important for us to attend. It doesn't mean you have to handle every emotion, but to know what are vulnerable spaces for us, and what feels okay. I'm going to pull out, this is a little poster that I have in my office. It's a young therapist in Charlotte that she painted these. This is not a first painting, but the top of it says, feelings are okay, maybe backwards. And all of those little colors, you can't see right, probably because it's too far, but all of those little colors all up into here are all feelings. And what I love, I'll sometimes have people get this and say, put that in your closet, or put that in your pantry to remind your family, like, hey, we're going to have lots of feelings, and feelings are okay. It's just how we end up engaging with them. Or do we give ourselves permission? Oh, I love that, Danielle, that you have it. It's so pretty. And they have, this is a pastel color one. It's called Pretty Words by Erin.com is where you can get it. And then she also has them with some bolder colors as well. So if you like bold colors, you can do that. Or if you like the pastel. Okay. And again, also different seasons allow for different things. If you just come out of surgery, don't go try to take a meal to somebody. Like, let somebody serve you. If you've just had a baby, like, be attuned to that baby. Don't worry about taking care of the thousands of other people that you know. So there's different seasons for holding space and different ways that we hold it depending on those seasons. Two other little pieces here. This is an interesting concept that I've been playing with more. This sounds bad. I'm going to say, be honest with yourself. This is a curious concept that I've just begun to play with. Now you're wondering why you're here at all, but this is the part I'll get to. So be honest with yourself, but be aware of what you say and what you don't say. So even though, up here, sort of in your thinking part of your brain, you may say, hey, I really want to help this person, or I really want to hold space for this person. But that sort of felt sense of you, that limbic system, that subcortical stuff in you, maybe like, I'm tired of exhausting and I can't even listen to you. Because sometimes that nervous system stuff that we're carrying gets whispered into sort of the field between us. That's the part that I've been playing with. I'm not just trying to play with be honest with yourself. So it's so curious, that piece where we're like, it's almost like we're whispering it in there, like, I don't like you, or I'm frustrated with you. And if somebody says, well, I feel like you're frustrated, you're like, no, I'm fine. You're like, no, just be honest. Or if you're exhausted, to go, I really would love to be able to help you, but I'm just completely depleted. And I can't. And I'm so sorry. And I'm, whatever. You can give sort of a kind blessing and then you're out. But to be able to be honest and to pay attention to what your system whispers to you and what you're whispering into the space between you and another person there. Here's another little reflection question. So we'll use that as a pause here because there's lots of words, I know. Take a breath if you can. What are the stories that we tell ourselves about holding space? So I'm going to give you some examples here. No one held space for me. Why would I do that for somebody else? No one will listen to me. I can't be a support to anyone else. I can't be helpful if I haven't had the same experience. They were rude to me. I'm not going to help them. It's useless. I don't have these skills. No one will hold space for me. I'm not a people person, so I don't do that. I don't have time. I don't have energy. I can't. So again, none of those comments may connect to you, but I would just encourage you to explore what are the stories that you're telling yourself about holding space, whether it's holding space for yourself or whether it's holding space for other people. Quick few bullet points here. What holding space is not. It's not judgmental. It's not fixing, not trying to control the outcome. And a few things of what not to say. What not to say. Don't say, and again, if you've done this is where I was like, no shame for any of us. If you say to the person, you're okay. I mean, how many to a kid, we probably all said this to our kids sometimes, you're okay. And sometimes we have to say, hey, it's going to be okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. There you get over it. Yep. But if you're holding space for an adult friend to be like, you know what, you're okay. It's really fine. Just get over it. You're minimizing. That's not helping. Or we really want to connect. And so we say, I understand. I have been through the same thing. Well, that's that piece where I'm like, no, I can't know what their yesterday held, what their 5 years ago, 20 years. So instead of the say understand or say I understand, say, oh, tell me more about that. What's that like for you? Be curious again. Be careful of giving advice. Be careful of lecturing. Be careful of just trying to fix. Now, this is another piece that I'm playing with more as well. I'm not the honesty piece. What happens if I get triggered when I'm listening to someone else? And this is a place that it really can happen. It was happening to me the other day. I was listening to someone talk, really trying to, not in session personally. And all of a sudden I found myself irritated. And I was like, and there was a distinct shift, like we both felt it, So be aware of what's going on in our own body and in our own thoughts and feelings. So if you've noticed your heart starting to race, if you notice, oh my goodness, I feel sick, or oh my goodness, I just want to get out of here, like that fight or flight, like I just want to run from this person, they're just making me mad, or whatever it is. Be aware of what's going on in your own body. Don't shame yourself for it. Think of it almost like, do you guys remember when we used to have answering machines and like we'd come home and it would be like beep, beep, beep? Think of your body like the old answering machines. There's a message. There's a message behind the irritation. There's a message behind the anger. There's a message behind the sadness or that feeling of like, I got to get out of here. It happens. So instead of shaming yourself, listen to the message, sit with it, be curious, hold space for yourself so you can sort through what's going on and what the message is. A couple other just key, easy pieces that you can do. And some people have already named this: deep breaths. If we're getting dysregulated, if it's a space where you can just practice breathing right there, that's great. If not, oh, excuse me, I need to use the restroom, and then go breathe. The other piece you can do, and breath, look up things on breath, square breathing, box breathing, all sorts of things that you can look up online to really help to calm your nervous system. And there's lots of people online doing, I don't have any great names right here, but doing breathwork workshops and using bodily things to help calm. So the other tool that I'll sometimes give to people or tell them about is tapping. So you can do this in a couple ways. So you can just gently do it like this. And feel free to play with that now if you want to. And see, it's sort of like it just cues a breath. Like I just took a breath after doing that. And when I used to work with teens, like if they were nervous for a test, I would, no, you're not going to sit in a test and do this. Or if you're talking to someone and they do say something that dysregulates you, you're probably not going to continue the conversation like this. But you can just gently, I just put my feet on the ground, I stop crossing my legs, and I'm just sort of gently tapping. I've had people do that if they're flying or if it's a kiddo taking a test, and just using that tapping to calm the nervous system. And also talking kindly to yourself gently. You can hear my voice even shifting a little bit as I'm doing this tapping. It sort of calms. One of the other pieces you can do is hum. And humming helps to calm that vagus nerve. So there's actually a workbook if you're in the therapist land. There's a polyvagal exercises. I was going to look at my bookshelf, but I won't turn around. It's something exercises to calm the vagus nerve or polyvagal exercises. So there's lots of very practical tools that you can use from that book as well. Movement, move, get stretch, go into the woods, scream, like just getting movement, releasing things can be helpful as well. Gently move if you're talking with somebody and it's a situation that you can't exit at that moment. Just say a prayer, say an intention to go, okay, I'm coming back to them. I'm going to follow their breath. Oh, okay, they're talking about this thing. And just gently move yourself back to that attentive posture. Again, don't shame, criticize. It is what it is. Just notice it. See what the message is behind it. One other, and this is probably one that you guys know as well, and I wouldn't do this if I'm holding space in the moment for someone, but is using your senses and doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to know 5 things I see, 4 things I hear. It doesn't matter what number and what sense you pair together, or I don't think it does, but then you can just go down that 5 things I hear, 4 things I see, 3 things I smell, 2 things I'm touching, 1 thing I'm tasting. So another easy tool to help to ground yourself, but pay attention to those sensings that are happening in your body. I'm going to, any other questions as we're.
I've got a question, Jennifer.
Yeah.
You mentioned that sometimes we're not in the space internally to hold space for others. That happens occasionally. What do you recommend we do to gracefully exit that situation without hampering a relationship?
Yeah, like if you're out with a friend or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a very safe friend to say, I really wish I could show up and hold this space for you right now, but I'm just depleted. And, maybe we could just take a walk if you still want to stay present for them. Because again, that movement helps to calm the nervous system and get us out of that, oh, I feel like I need to flee from here. And it's okay if it's with a friend to say, I just need to go. I really feel like I just need to go and I need to go take a walk or be by myself. And this is not about you. It's really about what's going on for me. So please give me grace in this. I really thought I was okay to come and have lunch, but I'm still dealing with this thing. If it's safe enough. And if it's not, you can be honest, but not fully open. If it's someone that you're not completely safe with, you can say, I'm not feeling well, because that is true. You're not feeling well. So I'm so sorry I'd have to cancel this lunch, but maybe we can reschedule. So you're honest, but not fully open. So, because they don't need to know all the details if they're not the close person. So does that help to answer? Okay, great.
Hey, Jennifer?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Hey, this is something else. So along those same lines, what do you do when you've continually held space for someone, but over time, I think you just feel like you can't do it anymore, like they're draining you. And so it's kind of like you feel like every time you see like the phone ring or you see their name come across your phone, it's kind of like you want to be there, but it's like it's definitely one-sided and you can't get the same from them, but it just always takes so much from you and you don't know if you can continue to hold that space.
Yes, that is a great question. So a couple of things come to mind. One, I would say outside of that person's presence, sit with that feeling, scan your body, see what you notice, see where you feel it in your body. If you feel it in your stomach, put your hand on your stomach and just see what comes up. Is it just connected to what that person is bringing to the table? Or is it also connected to, I had a friend in 6th grade who did the same thing to me and they were very unkind, and it's bringing up that old stuff as well. So I would say attend sort of whatever the message is in your body, attend to that, listen to that. And if you find, it's not old stuff, it really is what this person is bringing, I would say really then to discern, is this a relationship? Is it someone you're caring for that you can't step back, or could you get another caregiver to come back and in to help in those spots? The other thing I've seen people do is talk to that person with lots of boundaries up, in a time, in a space maybe where you've got more energy, or you can say, hey, yes, I can chat, but I've got a meeting in 30 minutes, so I can't stay on the phone for whatever longer. I can't go to lunch, but let me give you a quick call and find out how you are, so that you do it with a few more boundaries in place to honor what you're feeling. Or sometimes I'm just in a spot where I can't, I've got a heavy load that I'm carrying. Let me tend to that and I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. Does that help?
Yes, it does. I think the boundaries thing works. And I don't want to take up the time, but I'll just share really quickly, because then what I think I feel that is then when I have shared, maybe, I may reach out to say, hey, just checking on you. I've got a lot going on, and then I get unloaded on, but then the things that I'm dealing with kind of go unheard. Like, you don't know anything that I've got going on. So there's never space for me. And,
Yeah.
maybe that person is not my person for me to hold space for me, which is fine, but it feels very one-sided. So then I'm starting to feel like, I don't want to be resentful, and then, it's harder to hold that space for them when my need for the space is just not there, from them.
Yes.
So that makes
And
sense.
yes. And that would be the part where I would say, as you're sitting to attend to what is going on for you, to be curious and play with that, pray through that, think through that, discern, like what sort of spaces are you called to in this relationship? Are you called to stay in there,
Right.
or step back for a season? Do you name it?
Yeah.
Do they have capacity to hear that? Sometimes they do,
Yeah.
sometimes they don't. So it really is a discernment piece, but I would say attend to it. Don't just,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you don't have to just keep on going, because that's that place where sort of our nervous system will whisper in like, ugh, even if they don't say that, we don't say it, they can sometimes
Yeah.
feel that. And then it's just depleting. It's like, no, we need to listen to the message.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. No, we could probably do a whole talk on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Any others there? Any other questions? Yeah, no, you're safe people. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. I'll read you a couple. We won't do this. If we'd had more time, I would have done this exercise. So it's scan your body, notice where you're feeling tightness. And this kind of goes back to what we were just referencing there. Scan your body, notice where you feel tightness, and then notice where you feel most calm or grounded in your body. So this comes from the world of brain spotting, and it's actually called self-spotting. And then, like, let's say I feel calmest in my feet. Okay. And then what I want you to do is get a little more, wiggle your toes, fingers, get a little more grounded, and just notice that. And then that's a place where you can, with your eyes open or closed, go to find a spot that feels, kind of look left, middle, or right, a spot that feels calmer, because the idea behind brain spotting is where we look affects how we feel. So just play with that to go, do I feel calmer when I look over here or over here? You can't do it so quick on demand, but give yourself some time to do that. And then just process on that spot and see what comes up. See what you notice about that friendship that feels very frustrating, that you feel like they're just sort of, kind of plugging into you, and there's no collaboration in that. But again, scan your body, notice where you feel grounded, get a little more grounded, find a spot that feels even a little more calm, and then just process on that spot. And that is a great way to be able to hold space for yourself. Any thoughts as we're sort of pausing here? Okay. Any questions before we finish up here?
Hi, Jennifer. It's Jeannie. Back on the bit about origin story. What was the clinician's name you said? You said in counseling space you would recognize the name, but I didn't catch the name.
Yes, Dan Allender is one of the
Dan
names.
Allender. Okay,
Crystal
thank
probably
you.
has some great resources as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dan Allender, he has a faith component too. So some people like that, some people don't. He has a podcast that is called the Allender Center podcast. There's another one there that he's trained this other guy. It's called The Place We Find Ourselves. So that one kind of explores some of that story work as well. Yeah. And then Crystal, if you've got any others, toss them out there as well. Yeah, great question.
These are great. Thank you.
Yeah. I was at a graduation several weeks ago, and the speaker, he wasn't the main speaker, but he was sort of a build-up speaker. And he said in public speaking, people often have 3 points. And of course, I've given you like 1,000 points tonight, so as not to overwhelm. And he said, there's 3 points, so I'm going to use these 3 points. He said, number 1, be kind. Number 2, be kind. And number 3, be kind. So as we're learning this practice and these points, this is sort of the overarching theme, like be kind to yourself, to others. And if you find the anger bubbling up or sadness or fear or whatever, let that be the reminder. It's the message on the old machines. Attend to the message, see what it is, go click the button, go sit with yourself, go pay attention, scan your body, see what comes up, find a place that you feel more grounded and lean into that. And give yourself the kindness that you need to look at this stuff, to offer care, to do repair. We are going to misstep, even though we said, don't say I understand, don't say this. Like, we're going to misstep. And that's the place just to do repair. Be kind as we seek forgiveness, be kind as we offer forgiveness. That's a powerful work. And I'm going to share with you as we finish up, although I'm fine to answer any other questions. This was one of our trainers in brain spotting that gave us, this is a little poem by Mickey Scott-Page Jones. And this fits for Brave Step. The title of it's called An Invitation to Brave Space. Together we will create brave space, because there's no such thing as a safe space, meaning there can be safer, that sometimes we don't often feel safe. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars, and we all have caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow, just like the hydrangeas. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side, which I thought was just a sweet way to say, yes, I don't need to explain that, but that we all carry scars, we all have wounds, and we will make missteps, but we'll keep working on it, holding space for one another. So thank you. That is all I have. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Thank you. I think I can say that on behalf of all of us here. This was absolutely phenomenal. I learned so much this evening. One thing I do want to mention to everyone